Okay, it's recording. All right, here we go. Let's expand and simplify question 1a. We've got menu, press number 3 for algebra, press number 3 for expand, and you type in the bracket. So bracket 4 times x plus 3 times with 3 times x minus 7, close brackets, press enter, and that's my answer. Write it down. 12x squared minus 19x minus 21. Okay, you can do that for all kinds of expansions. So all of these questions here can all be expanded and answered. You can do it by hand too. Okay, so if you did it by hand, it would just take a bit longer, but I'm trying to teach you how to use your CAS. I know it says tech free, but we haven't practiced our CAS often enough. Okay, so as long as you know where the numbers are and you're feeling quite nimble with it, that's what I want you to take out of the exercise. Okay, what's something that you might be careful of? Maybe be careful. You know when you write 9 bracket? This occurred with Anthony just in the back when last session, I think it was, or the session before. If you don't put the times in his calculator, it didn't solve it. There was an error to it. So maybe put it as a habit. When you type the 9, don't just type 9 and then the bracket itself. Don't do that. Actually press the times button, 9 times bracket. Get in the habit of putting times in between the variables and the numbers and letters, because sometimes it might not work. So I'm not sure if it's because Anthony's too updated with his calculator or it's not updated. That's why it doesn't do that. But just to save yourself from an error, make sure to get into the habit of just doing times in between each letter and number. Okay? So if I would do that one, I would do menu, 3, 3, open bracket, x plus 1, close brackets, and the square button's just next to the 4. So right over here, square. And then minus 9 times. So I put the times button in, open brackets, x plus 1, close brackets, plus 8. Okay, close brackets. And we get x squared minus 7x. So far, so good. Factorizing, same idea. Let's factorize this. So again, you can do this by hand because it's tech free, but you can check with your CAS. How do you factorize with your calculator? Same thing. Menu, algebra is number 3. And instead of expand, instead of solve, it is factor. If you do factorize, so you click factorize, and then you type in the equation. Now this time, make sure to put in the times between each letter. So if you don't do the B and the C, they may not know. So you got to do 18 times a squared minus 50. Don't just write B squared C4, because the calculator might think B and C are together. Okay, so make sure to put a times in between those two. And what are we factorizing? Wait, how do you even factorize that? You can only take out the constant, actually. That's funny. There's no x's. Oh, I think what happens is if you take out the common factor 2, then you get a 9 and 25, then you can use difference of perfect squares. So you might want to do that by hand, actually. Try that by hand, see if you can get the same answer. It's a good one. So that one, for those who don't know, here's a little tip. Take out the 2 first. And you should get 9a squared minus 25b squared c4. Question is, how do you change this to a difference of perfect squares? So remember, you need something squared minus something squared. If you can write what goes in the brackets, then you can factorize that. It's a good one to have a go. My solution's already there, so you can have a look later, but that's probably worth doing by hand. Okay? Don't forget the 2 on the outside. Notice how I'm using my brackets. I'm very clear with what I'm doing. I took out the 2, and the aim is to figure out what goes inside the little brackets when you square. If you do it correctly, this should be the answer over here. It should be 2 bracket 3a minus 5bc squared, and then 3a plus 5bc squared. Okay. There is a thing I haven't taught you guys on your CAS calculator that you might find useful. Go to menu, algebra, and just underneath, which we never talked about, complete the square. So if you struggle on completing the square for exercise 3E, on the CAS, on the SAC, you can do it too. You can actually factorize by completing the square. So you can go complete the square of, let's say, D, for example. If I were to complete the square of D, then I would do 6 times x squared minus 7 times x minus 5, comma x. And there you go. That's completing the square. They haven't factorized it yet. You can then factor this to get into the two brackets. Okay, so you can ask the calculator to do difference of perfect squares for you. How do you do that? Same thing. Menu, algebra, factor. So menu 3-2. And if you just bring this one up, highlight it, bring it down, comma x. There you go. So if the question asks you to complete the square, this is completing the square. If they ask you to factorize by completing the square, then this is your first step, that's your second step. This is called factorizing. This is called completing the square. So when they say factorize by completing the square, they want you to do this and then that. Okay, so there's 2 steps there. Cool. Again, you can do all that by hand as well, but I'm teaching you how to do it on a CAS. So complete the square, and then you factor it. Short ways to highlight and bring it down.
Are there any stacks of blue where you don't have CAS?
Yeah. Often it's, we would have done a test-ish. So we might not want to call it a SAC, but we treat it like a SAC. Yeah. Often the SACs, we try to get you to think more application-based. So we do modeling. So often it does have a calculator. Except when it comes to exams, we might do an exam 1, then you don't have any CAS or calculator. So back then we used to do 2 types of exams, where the first part you get half an hour to without using a CAS, without notes, and then the second part of the exams you get notes in your CAS. You just have to switch over the paper. Yeah. So that might come in. I'm not sure if we're doing that this year as well. That could be up for discussion. Depends on how your algebra as a cohort is. If it looks poor, then we might make a SAC that works on your non-CAS skills. Yeah. All right, let's have a look. What else can I teach you that you may not have learnt? Oh, settings. For those who do general maths, when you're doing methods, you might need a switch here. Make sure your settings, when you're in methods, we always do in exact form. We never do it approximate, and we never use the decimals. So to change the settings, go to Document, the Document button, go to Settings. Whoops. I'm going to do it again. Doc number 7, settings, document settings, which is number 2. So doc 7.2. Make sure calculation mode is in exact. Don't leave it on auto. Don't leave it on approximate. Leave it on approximate if you're doing general maths. If you're not doing general maths and you're in the methods class, change it to exact. Okay, because it's always easier to change from exact to decimals if you wanted to, but you cannot change from decimals back to exact value. And in methods, we always work with exact. Okay, whereas in general, you will use decimals, so hence approximate. So depending on which class you're in, make sure to change the settings. And later on, once we get to circular functions, you're going to have to change the angle from degree to radians. Okay, but at the moment, we're not there yet, so I'm not going to tell you to change that, but that should be in radians for methods. All right, what else should you know? Oh, here's another one that sometimes it comes up on a SAC and you might have an issue. When you sketch a graph, can you all do Control Doc, add on a graph page? So do Control Doc, add on a graph. Yep. Add on a graph page. Let's sketch a random graph. I'm just going to make it up. Let's go x squared plus 2x. Let's just do that, x squared plus 2x. This is what your graph looks like. X squared plus 2x. Okay, so just type it in, x squared plus 2x. Press enter. Now, you know the settings I just showed you just now? Sometimes the questions, when they ask you to find the turning point, sometimes the turning point is in decimals, and sometimes they want you to round to 2 decimals. But when you do it in your CAS, sometimes it only shows 1 decimal, but you need to show 2. You will get penalized if you only give 1 decimal and not 2. So how do you make sure that your graph shows 2 decimals? there's a graph setting. Graph setting is different to calculator setting. So where do you go? Go to menu. And you see how there's a setting here? So if you go to menu on the graph page, when you click menu, there's a settings there. This settings is different. Notice the difference here. See how it's float 3 degrees? That float 3 is how many digits they will show you. Okay, so if the number is very big, it doesn't show you there the decimals. So that's why, just in case, I would want you to change that to float 5 and beyond. Okay, make sure it's about 5 and beyond, and that should cover about 2 decimal places. If you're worried, you can put it up to 6 or 8. But then your digits will be too big. So just put it about 5 or 6, and that should be good, just to make sure those 2 settings. So one is in exact in your settings, and then in your graph settings, make sure you have the decimals covered for you. Okay? What else can I teach you with your CAS that you might not know? Do you all know how to solve this on your CAS? Question 6, solve the following pair of equations algebraically. If you were doing your CAS, hands up if you know how to do this. 1, 2, 3. All right, let's do it together. Go back to your calculator page. So control and press the arrows. If you press control, click the arrows, you move left and right. So press left. There you go. So we're back to the calculator page. I want to solve for these two because they're saying solve for the equation algebraically, so you're going to equate them. So what you do is you go to menu, algebra. There are 2 versions to this. I always do the one thing because I limit the amount of thinking I have to do. So I always do menu 3.1. But if you really wanted to, you can use a template, solve systems equations, and they do that too. Okay, but I like to do menu 3.1. So what I do is I go menu 3.1. I get the solve button like I've always taught you. And right next to the 9, that's your frequently used operations. So if you click on that symbol, that will give you all the things we often use. In our case, we often solve. See that bracket there? That has 2 boxes for 2 equations, and we do have 2 equations. If you have more, use the one to the right. So here I'm going to use this middle one here. So I'm going to say, let's click on the 2 boxes. Gives me a template. Now write in the equation, I've got y equals -2 times x plus 4. Make sure to put the times in between the 2 and the x. Press tab, it goes down. Now do it again. Y equals x squared minus 8 times x plus 12. Got my 2 equations. Make sure to press tab so you move across just a bit, or you can move the arrow across. Comma x, comma y. So you're going to do a comma to say solve for these 2, comma I want you to solve for x, and comma I want you to solve for y. That's what it's saying. Okay, so solve for these 2 equations, x and y. If I press enter, that tells me the 2 coordinates are 2, 0 and 4, -4. So when x is 2, y is 0, and when x is 4, y is -4. So you got your 2 points of intersection. Okay? Again, you could have done systems equations, and they would have just gave you this template to begin with. And then you just type in the equations. Okay? It's up to you which one you want to do. What's another one that you guys can learn? Tech. Discriminant you guys can do. All right, this one. You guys got your CAS with you. I'm going to time you. Get yourself ready. Get a CAS out. Question 3. The graph with equation y equals x squared plus 6x plus 7. Without doing it by hand, because if this is a non-CAS, this is a CAS-enabled test, you should be able to do it on your CAS. Don't do it by hand. Let me get my timer out. Here we go. I want you to solve for it, and then you're going to compare with my steps too. Let's see if you can do it. So I'll give you a max of 90 seconds because that's the longest time you should take. Shouldn't take more than, because it's 1 mark for this, so if you times it by 1.5, should only take you 90 seconds to do maximum. But for all of you, it should take you probably less than 30 seconds, okay? So here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. 90 seconds. How would you find the x-intercepts?
It gives like a weird, so like there's like negative in front of it.
Yeah, that's correct.
I know it's correct, but like it's just confusing.
Yeah, that's because we put an exact form. Otherwise, they would give you a decimal. But yeah, that's negative root 2 and then negative 3. So it's essentially negative 3 plus and minus root 2.
Negative 3.
So that negative, if you expand the bracket, it's negative times the root 2 and then negative times 3. So it's both negative 3, but the difference is the two root 2's. One's positive.
3 plus minus. So negative 3 minus 3.
It's past a minute. We've got about 20 seconds left. You see, 90 seconds is a long time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see. So if I were to do this, we are literally solving for the x-intercept, so y must equal to 0. So you go menu 3, 1. So I just press menu 3, 1 for solve. 0 is equal to x squared plus 6 times x plus 7 comma x. That's all you're going to type. That's the equation, and you want the y value to equal 0. That's what I'm solving for. So if I press enter, here's my two answers. You're going to learn how to read this as well. This tells you, I'm just going to screenshot it so you can see. You got to learn how to read this. So it looks funny, but you must learn how to read this part. Whoops. Let me just do it over here. That line there, this just means negative of root 2, and then that's a negative of the 3. Whilst this one is just a positive root 2 and a minus 3. So you got two answers. X equals 2, negative 3 minus root 2, or x is equal to negative 3 plus root 2. You see that? So I'm just reading it. That's negative 3, which is here. Negative 3. That's a plus root 2, and that's a negative of a root 2. So the answer is negative 3 plus or minus root 2. Which one is it? Let's have a look. Which one is the correct answer then? The answer should have been A. Hands up if you did it in less than 90 seconds. Okay, good. That is the speed that you need to be working at. And when you see those kind of questions, which you won't anymore because it used to be a multiple choice, then you had to work at that pace. Okay, but when you have a application question, that's the kind of speed you want to go through. Okay, let's have a look at another one. Oh, that's the answer. I shouldn't have shown you that one. This one's exercise 3K. Let's see if you can redeem yourself now. 3K. There's a graph. Which one is the correct graph? There's a couple of things you can look out for. I can already eliminate 3 possibilities just by looking at it. There are 3 things that it can't be. What would you use a CAS for so that you can solve this? Remember, it's a CAS thing, so you should be using a CAS too. Forgot to time you guys. Let me do that again. Let's give you 1 minute instead.
Without a exact yet. Without a CAS exact.
With a CAS or without one? Whoa. That's 30 seconds. Oh, sorry, we started already. It should take you about 30 seconds to do anyway. All right. That's 1 minute. Plus the timing that I didn't do, that would have been 90 seconds. What's the quickest way to do this? Numafi already hinted the very first thing you can eliminate is A, B, and C. Why? Y-intercepts. Look for the axis intercepts. Y-intercepts is the easiest one. -6. And this is a general equation. So if x was equal to 0, these all cancel out. So all you have to look for is which one has -6. These two have -6. So it can only be either D or E. Now the next thing is you can try to factorize and find x-intercepts. But that still works. It just takes a bit longer. For me, I was going to look for the turning point. And I already just showed you how to do the completing the square. You can complete the square or you can graph it. It's up to you, whichever you want. But I would have just gone and did menu, algebra, complete the square, and I've got just x squared of, let's go x squared minus 4 times x minus 6. Correct, let's see. That tells me turning point is down by 10 to the right by 2. Down by 10, that's correct. To the right by 2, that's not right. So if it's not D, it has to be E. Cool? Or Numafi's way, without using a CAS, axis symmetry. Negative B on 2A, test it. Negative B, which is negative of -4, divided by 2 times 1, does it equal to -2? If it doesn't, it's not D, then it must be E. Okay, so you could find the turning point, or you could have done the x-intercept, or you could sketch this graph for both, and then you would figure them out. Okay, so no matter which way, you can all do it in about 30 seconds. Okay? All right, very good. Let's find another one. What's another one you guys can do? That's intersection. That's graphing. What is the turning point? I think that's about it from me. Oh, no. One more thing. One last thing. Can you go to this page, question 3? See that bit? A little tail? I haven't shown you guys this. That bit. Does anyone know what this is called? It's an inequality. In a graph, we call it a domain. And what it means is that instead of sketching a graph fully, infinitely, there is a restriction that your x-axis, which is t, can only be between 0 and 11. So how do you do that on your CAS? How do you make sure that it doesn't graph infinitely, but only graphs between 0 and 11? Good. It's called a vertical line. It's a given line. I'm going to show you how to do it. Here we go. Go to your graph page again. So we had a graph page before. Move over to the graph page. Yep. Press tab. I can't be bothered deleting the old graph, so I'm just going to leave it there. Press tab. So you should have F2 now. The other one was F1. If you want to go back to F1, just press up. And that's my first graph. I go to F2. That's my second graph. Okay. So I'm going to graph this now. So we've got h of t, which we'll call f of 2 of x. 1.1 times, don't use t. Calculator doesn't know t's. It only knows x's. So you got to change it to x squared minus 12.22 times x. Whoops, I made a mistake there. I was going to say t again. Minus 12.22x plus 48.5. Now, if I do this, if I press enter, don't press enter. But if I press enter, what it does is sketches the graph. Oh, I got to fix the window. Let me just show you what it looks like. Zoom fit. This is what it looks like. But can you see how it's an infinite graph right now? That's an infinite graph there, right? I don't want it to go on infinitely. I need it between 0 and 11. It can only go between 0 and 11. It can't go negative side. So I shouldn't have that red graph right now. So how do you restrict it? So before I told you not to press enter, so don't press enter. Go back here. You got to give it a restriction. So how do you tell it to restrict? Press Control equals. Okay, press Control equals right after you typed everything. Control equals that vertical line that Mete just said. That's called given. That's our language to say given that. So you're going to give it a condition. So you say, given that, so there's a vertical line, you want 0 to be the smallest number. So given that 0, and you actually find this inequality. Control equals again. And there's your inequality. 0 must be less than or equal to x, but it's also less than or equal to 11. If I do that now and I press enter, that should restrict the graph between 0 and 11. It won't go on infinitely. So if I press enter, can you see how the graph, it's shrunk? Because it's only this bit. That's where 11 is. So if I zoom in, if I go to menu for box, let's go menu for box again, menu for box. Let's just zoom in here so you can see. See that? That's between 0 and 11. That's capped. If you don't cap it, it goes on forever. Yeah? So, how did I do that again? I'm going to show you. Type in the equation. Use the vertical line. Control equals vertical line. And then do between 0 and 11. So copy exactly what you have here. Okay? That's probably the last thing I just got to show you so that you know how to sketch a graph that's restricted. I think the rest you can do now by yourself. Okay? It is currently, what time is it now? It is 1:05. You got 25 minutes. Work on either the linear quadratic application or you can work on just the quadratics one. It's up to you, but you want to practice your CAS. Read the questions, use the CAS. You should be able to solve them. Each one's about 90 seconds to 2 minutes.
All of them with the CAS.
Rest of them, yeah. Rest of them you should be able to do with the CAS. Press tab. Yeah. Press tab and then press up or down.